Well, you'd think.
Live stream's on. Okay, people, it's 3 o'clock, so we're live streaming, and welcome to those that are joining us on live stream. We only have one apology, which is Leslie. Somebody would like to move and second that. Darren and Trish. Trish, are you the Leslie substitute today, are you?
Just assume the seat.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. And we just to acknowledge that we have Councillor Arnold on Zoom from a much warmer country. We also have a major late item that's been presented by staff as well, and so that relates to the government policy statement on transport, which needs to be activated. So somebody would like to move and second.
Accepted as a major late item.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Yep, thank you, Tom. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. So we have some minutes to work our way through, so we'll just do that. The minutes of the Bluff Community Board meeting on the 12th of February. Grant, thank you. Yep, Barry, thank you. Any discussion around those minutes? Yes, Grant.
Yeah, I think it's really important we note there was quite some key discussions with Great South in regard to the priority bluff sits within the tourist strategy for Southland, and they acknowledge the fact that the high priority it does play. So I think that's really important to note and remember as we go forward and think about anything else that we might be thinking about with bluff. So
Sure.
That's the one thing. And then the other piece was around the funding. So the request in that report, which I support, is around the funding for Great South to do some of the work in Bluff, and I think it's 18,000 is funded from the existing funding that we give to Great South, not additional funding.
Sure.
So that's important to note within that paper as well. So that, I think that's just important to call people's attention.
Any further discussions? No, there being none. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the meeting of council held on the 27th of February 24. Somebody would like to move? Barry? Yeah, Tom, seconded. Any discussion around those minutes? Alright, there being none. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried.
Mute Councillor Arnold? Yeah.
Is he mute?
There was some feedback.
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Could you just mute your microphone, Alan? It's an attractive look.
Should be okay. Is that okay?
It's a meme.
No, because we can hear you.
We can still hear
It's
you.
not so much you, it's all the background noise.
We've got a meme.
Get control of the kids.
It's all right. It's done now.
Yep. All right. Minutes of the Infrastructure Committee meeting held on the 5th of March.
I'll move those, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Tom.
I can see you.
Grant, seconded. Any discussion on those? There being none. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. And I'll just make a slight comment about that. We've had an email from the Chief Executive within the last 24 hours about the decision-making process that went on in that. So I will raise some issues about that later on, because my view is that I don't think the committee had the right to make the decision it made at the time. So we'll come back to that, because I think it's an important thing about democracy that a majority of our decision making should be made at full council where everybody's in attendance, as opposed to at committees where we have a smaller number of elected members involved. So just moving on to the minutes of the Connected Murahiki Joint Committee meeting held on the 11th of March. Somebody like to move those?
I'll move those.
Yeah, thank you. Seconder, yeah, Darren, thank you. Any discussions about those minutes? You're the expert on them now, eh?
Yeah, that was the most robust probably meeting, I think.
Yep.
Talking to the
Yep.
structure, the measurables, the anecdotal evidence isn't enough, that we need clear measures.
Sure.
Yeah, how we're measuring those things. And also there's a meeting on Thursday around the actual platform.
Sure.
I've joined that meeting just to look at the structure of it. It is focused on the social and community sector and building resourcing around them, whether that be funding, governance training, volunteering. That's the starting point, and then it'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Steve. Any further discussion? No? All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the meeting of the Finance and Projects Committee, meeting held on the 19th of March 2024. Grant?
I'll move that with the recommendation.
With the recommendation.
Adjustments for the schedule forecast changes.
Sure. Seconder? Tom? Sorry. You seconding, Tom?
I second it.
Oh, yes, thank you. Any discussion around those minutes? And the recommendation? No, there being none. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Invercargill Venue and Events Management Limited, IVM, dividend and wind up.
If I can, Mayor Clark.
Sure.
So IVM has essentially been a shelf company for the last couple of years. Council's been well aware of that. Councillor Campbell and I are the directors that sit on it at the moment, simply while it exists on the shelf. There are some funds that it holds, so the two recommendations are about returning those funds to the parent and signing a resolution to remove IVM from the company's register. So it's procedural. Happy to move the recommendations.
Yep, thank you.
I'll second, Chair.
Yep, thank you, Tom. Any further discussion about that? Yep, so Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question. It says in the financial implications that the funds or the dividend will be paid into the council's general reserves. And I was wondering, is that normal standard practice for the dividends to go there, or can we earmark it for some other area that will need future funding?
That was my question as well. So
And mine.
I guess that's council's decision, but if you were going to earmark it, it would be appropriate to earmark it to projects that related to the Civic Theatre, the Scottish Hall or Rugby Park,
that's right.
That's where my thought process was going to.
but nothing outside of that. I guess if council wants to indicate that, can be just noted and actioned, and it can be reported back as to how that goes from the general reserve into projects, or we could add a 0.3.
Yep. I'll let Michael discuss in a minute, but I mean, going into a general reserve would normally give you a wide parameter of options that you could use the funds for. Michael.
Through yourself, Chair. Look, I'd be happy if it was put down there as an item 3 to go into a general reserve. That doesn't limit from that perspective, so happy with that approach.
So with Councillor Campbell's approval, I'd like to suggest we add 3, that the funds from general reserve be restricted for use by the Civic Theatre, Scottish Hall or Rugby Park.
Through you, Chair, I don't think I would actually add that. I mean, well, I understand the reason for it. I mean, all we're really doing is tying one hand behind our back by doing that. And if you put it to general reserve, clearly it could be used for the purpose that Darren has just outlined, but it could also be used for other purposes. So I don't really see the point of restricting ourselves in that way. So I wouldn't second it. I wouldn't oppose it, but I wouldn't second it.
Okay, I mean, essentially the intent is the money sat there for use by venues. If you think of, whilst there's been a lot of work done at the Scottish Hall, but if you think of the Civic, it has a high maintenance program, and certainly there's no shortage of work going on at Rugby Park. So, you know, the $270,000 odd would be swallowed up pretty quickly.
Presumably it came from general reserve, though.
That was generated.
No, it's set in a rates allocation to IVM to subsidise public good element for those venues.
Okay.
Oh, right. So it wasn't earned through revenue. So ticket sales, or
There were a couple of times when there was a profit made, but generally there's a lot of public good that goes into the running of venues.
yeah. No, I'm not. I'm just trying to. So my question was around: did we have it budgeted as a in effect a windfall, or is it over budget? Yeah, in terms of it's come outside of what we budgeted and everyone's traditional.
It's money that was left over.
No. Sorry, not that. The money coming back into general fund for council. That we haven't budgeted for that money to come in this financial year.
Council won't have known.
No.
Well, it's noted in the report that it's a like document transaction.
Okay, Evelyn.
At the time when the budgets were being set,
It wouldn't have been budgeted. Yes, so it's sort of a bit of extra.
Yeah, sorry, Evelyn. Michael, do you want to add to that?
Through yourself, Chair, I was going to just add to that, no. From perspective of budget of the transfer side of it, no, it wouldn't have been. But it is a balance sheet transfer at the end,
Yeah, no.
from
but
that perspective.
yeah,
but
what changes in yeah.
we have, but no, it hasn't been.
Yeah, thanks.
Evelyn.
Oh, kia ora. So, like Councillor Bond, I was thinking about proposed expenditure for accessibility issues at Scottish Hall came to my mind. And, you know, we are constantly struggling to advocate for things that, such as that, that are a cost and have to sometimes be delayed. So I personally would love to see us put it into the additional accessibility to Scottish Hall, but I do understand the remarks that others have made that there are other worthy places as well. But accessibility at Scottish Hall has been an issue that has come before us several times, and it would seem like this might be an option to offset the cost of that and to put it higher up the
I would support
profile.
on that basis, Chair.
So the issue,
I would support the resolution on that basis.
the issue of accessibility around the Scottish Hall, there's really only the side door option because of the way the steps out the front are constructed, but it certainly is very weather prone. And I think that's been the gist of the feedback we've had. Yep.
Trish.
Would we presume if this money was allocated back to those events, the Scottish Hall, Civic Theatre and whatever, that money already budgeted or allocated for that in the budget would then go into the general funds?
Well, that's going to be my question as well. We've already got allocated money in the long-term plan for Rugby Park Road, so.
We need to allocate it to a specific project, which is why I would support what Evelyn just suggested, because then it's definitely getting into a project rather than just offsetting operating cost.
Yeah.
In which case, you end up your money around the general reserve
Right.
anyway.
Yeah.
Any other discussion about that? I guess one of the issues is does the Scottish Hall become the project of priority, or do we have some other ideas on where that money could be used? I mean, personally for me, I'd put a pump track down Bluff, but that's another issue.
It's not a venue.
Well, it's only a venue if we want to restrict it to a venue. Doesn't
Well,
it?
Event.
for the
Kids would
for the
think it's a
intent
venue.
of the company that it's coming from, it doesn't qualify.
No,
Yeah.
That's not the sort of thing that they were involved in operating.
Yep, that's okay. So at this stage, I've got Darren and Tom putting it forward. Any further discussion?
Sorry, no, Tom wasn't.
No, I think he said he seconded
No,
that.
I would support depending on the wording. I think I'd support it if it went to a specific project rather than just underwriting operating costs.
Okay. Dividends. That the money be so 3 is the money be allocated to disability access for the Scottish
Yeah.
Hall.
So I would support the wording like that. I mean, it's hard to imagine more worthy. You see it.
So any further discussion on that?
That's good.
I mean, I've got no idea about the access fees, but if we use it half of that to improve the access, what would we do? What would happen to the rest of the funds?
It would vanish.
We use
Yeah.
up to something.
I have no idea how much
No.
it would cost to do that, but there's probably the chance to improve some of the disability facilities around the Scottish Hall as well.
Okay. All right, there being no further discussion, all those in favour of that?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No, carried. Excellent. Where did we get to? Oh. Update on sister cities. We've got a report there. Initial mover and seconder.
I move.
Yeah, Tom and Darren, thank you. Any discussion? Oh yeah, I'll give you a rangy, seeing that you asked for it first.
Yeah, look, I apologise. I thought there would have been more information given on the Sue Chen situation, considering, I guess it was highlighted about the 2017 visit and the purpose for that visit and the actual purpose for the actual setting up of the Sue Chen relationship.
Yep.
That the Kumagaya was acknowledged as our cultural sister city, and the Sue Chen was the opportunity for mutual commercial opportunities between the two places. Now, if you look, everyone on this council, no doubt, has looked at the memorandum of understanding that's on our website for Sue Chen, and it was signed A delegation went over in 2017. We had Councillor Amundsen, Crackett, Soper, Lewis. We had Chief Executive Richard King, Chief Executive Paul Casson, President of the Chamber of Commerce, Carla Forbes, and an Invercargill staff member, Iwan Harris Mitchell. Now, if you look at what that Memorandum of Understanding says, I'm wanting to find out what has happened, what has been delivered. There were promises made both by the Chamber and by Venture, and I'm just asking, we're 7 years down the track.
Yep.
And this was not set up for a cultural exchange. It was set up for commercial opportunities.
Okay.
Or do we retract what we put on our website and say it didn't happen? I mean, that's what I'm asking for.
Yep, I understand that. I'll let other people speak to that, Rangi. But you're right, we might require a further in-depth report around the Memorandum of Understanding and what it's set out to do and what has happened since then. We've also got to say, Tom.
I think it would be always impossible to tie increased exports to a sister city agreement, no matter where you did it anywhere in the world. It'd be impossible to tag it. Impossible to know how many extra tourists or how many extra dollars. I mean, the thing I'd observe is that over $700 million of exports through Bluff go to China. That 30% of all Southland's exports go to China. And to me, that now whether it would be 29% if we did not have a 29.9%, I mean, you'll never know. You will just never know. To me, it's just sensible to have a sister city agreement with a country which takes 30% of our exports.
Yep. Yep, I've got some. Darren? Oh, sorry. Evelyn?
Kia ora. So we've had a pandemic which slowed down relationships. It would be mindful of us to reactivate. I don't have a problem with that. But this is not the only sister city relationship we have that has fallen into abeyance. I'm not sure how many people who are sitting around here actually know that we've got a city-sister relationship with Hobart.
No, it's lapsed.
I know, but this happens. You know, so if it is no longer their wish or our wish to continue with it, that's what happens. That's grown-up stuff. If they still want it, if we still think it's important, we need to reach out. But sister city relationships do not always last the test of time. And Hobart is what I raised it because it's an example. At the time, it was a cultural exchange, it was all sorts of things, and about tourism, and that time passed and the relationship is gone. Maybe this is going to be the same as that. But I appreciate Councillor Pottinger drawing to our attention the fact that we should be putting some form of visible expression around this to either not continue, or if they don't wish to continue, accept gracefully that that time has passed. But I also endorse what Councillor Campbell says. Hundreds of millions of dollars of exports, valuable exports, go from this area to China every week.
Darren.
Thank you. Having been on the 2013 trip, one of the things that resonated was the significance of having that relationship, friendly city relationship, they call it, for Chinese businesses who want to form partnerships in New Zealand. It adds strength for them and getting government support, knowing that there's that political relationship. But Evelyn's also right in reminding us of the fact that there was a pandemic, because in the meantime there was the much reduced scale Chinese garden, which includes the Moon Gate and the rockery and the stream and what have you at Queen's Park, next to the Winter Gardens. And we haven't hosted a delegation from China to be here since that opened. They were very keen on sporting cultural changes and exchanges and educational exchanges, and they were happening. I know that there were several students from Sichuan that were studying through SIT, so I guess it's a case of re-establishing those those links. But as Tom said, the relationship itself for our export market is worth more than is visibly apparent.
Maria?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make note that the last time the sister city friendships were put under the microscope was in 2011 when a review was asked for. I think that combined with what everyone else has said, that yes, they are important, and I wonder, because Saquan was more of that economic benefit, if the council or those delegates at the time had involved with NZ BRIC, which is New Zealand Business Roundtable in China. Their purpose is to facilitate meetings, economic good for future friendships as well. So in the future, if we decide to continue, 12 of us elected members, that we want to continue with this, I think that there could be value in approaching NBRIC with that, but I also think there could be value in doing a review to see, since the pandemic, do our ratepayers feel that this is the best use of their ratepayer money?
From my perspective, I think that we take a significant risk by opting out of this sister city. Many places, like the one referred to in Hobart, probably not a lot of political damage, but there would be a strong message to China or parts of China if we were to pull out. Talking to Alliance Directorship late last year, they said most of their meat products go into northern China, very close to the Russian border. And we often just see China as being China, but there's a huge landscape that it goes to. But I guess the issue is, do we want to continue and foster that relationship? And if we do, then we become active in maybe inviting them to come over as a first point of call. So, Ringy.
Look, a couple of things. It's obvious that the people in this room have not read that MOU. And also, the main reason for raising this is political accountability. If you're going to send a crowd of people over to do something like this, and an MOU is a very strong document to sit down and sign, then there has to be accountability. Now, you can pick it apart now, but that's not the question I'm asking. And you can say that just having a sister city is a great thing, regardless of what happens, but it's not the question I'm asking at all. It's accountability for what was done. It's like us deciding to do something on council, and we could come back 6 years later and say, nah, we didn't really mean it at the time. That's all I'm asking for, is accountability. And it'd be good for people to read that MOU actually and understand why I'm raising this.
So given that you asked for the report, and given that it doesn't give you enough information, are you in favour of continuing to pursue a sister city relationship?
I think it's up to this committee. I would, if they want more information or they're quite happy with the status quo. I mean, obviously, from what I've heard, everyone's happy with the status quo.
That's not what it said. I'd like more information.
Well, yeah, Ria's
I'd like to
asked
see
for
that more economic benefit to this.
Everyone, the rest of the committee seem quite happy with the status quo.
Not the status quo, but
Tom.
rather reigniting the relationship.
Mr. Mayor, I mean, it seems to me that we are putting ourselves under some kind of false pressure to make a decision. There simply does not need to be a decision at this point. I mean, there was a giant hole, particularly in China, with COVID. There's a 3-year gap, which you could say is down to COVID. I think it's appropriate in the next while to be thinking about whether we do want to visit or whether to invite them to visit. But I don't see any reason at this meeting why we should be putting ourselves under that pressure. It's not long enough away that we should say that the relationship has gone stale.
I guess what I was trying to gauge was, I mean, what do I ask staff to provide a report on, a further report? Do we want them to give us the pros and cons of maintaining a relationship, which is
Well, it's
the
costing
status
us
quo?
nothing at the moment, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's not costing us anything.
Yeah, but we're doing nothing though. I guess that's the issue. And I guess if you have a sister relationship, you have an ongoing relationship. It's a little bit like having a family member, you never visit them. I mean, my views are quite well known on sister cities. I don't particularly like them, having said that, when I went to Kumagaya, we had a lot of benefit out of that. Ongoing benefits, especially around sports and education. So I don't know, if we get another report, we'll be back at the table making some decisions. But happy to ask for one of those. Alex.
Oh, thank you. Through you, Mia. With Sushi and City, the agreement was made between us and Sushi and Invercargill, with the view of developing friendship and promoting exchanges and cooperation in the area of economy, education, sports and tourism. Obviously that was signed pre-COVID, so the tourism scenario was slightly out of the window for a while, but it also committed to support each city residents to choose each sister city as a tourist destination, work together to promote cooperation in economy and trade, and to promote the international eco quadrathlon to New Zealand, which was they introduced to us while we were over there, where they were having an international eco duathlon or triathlon, quadrathlon in fact. So obviously that went out the window when COVID came in. That memorandum of understanding is executed in both English and Chinese, but I'd really like to draw the point to the fact that it literally says that we were promoting exchanges and cooperation of areas of economy, education, sports and tourism. The sports exchange actually occurred between Invercargill and Sushian by sending a delegate from Invercargill over to coach their rugby team in Sushian, because we have some outstanding rugby players here and they really wanted to glean some of their knowledge. So in action since then, in the sports area, we've had international students from Sushian come over here to study SIT. So that's some actions in the education sector. And as Councillor Campbell, the Deputy Mayor, very rightfully pointed out, we have such a substantial amount of our export here in Southland heading over to China. So we certainly politically support the economy sides of things. So really, like, when it comes down to reading what has occurred from when that memorandum of understanding was signed to the reflection of the fact that we've also gone through a pandemic, and now hopefully we need to, you know, incite some things a bit more. But the fact that, like Councillor Campbell said before, that we actually haven't spent any money on this aside from building a friendship garden over the last few years, I think that the ratepayers might be actually quite comfortable to say that we've benefited somewhat from memorandum of understanding and the economy and the export since we've signed it. And I think that, like, the $30,000 or the $40,000 to send the delegates on exchange at that time was well worth it.
Okay, Rangi, back to you. What do you want by further information?
No, just I'm happy with that report. No, as I said before, from what I gathered from this committee, it's fine just to be received, and
Okay.
yeah, no, that's it. So thanks very much, Michael, for that report.
I guess, do we want any further paper from staff about how we would start to reactivate our relationship, given that it's gone quiet over COVID? What our options are? We invite
Chair,
them.
I think it would be helpful to have perhaps a report suggesting how we might reactivate it,
Yes.
Yeah.
rather than ask the question, do we let it slip away? I mean, I think let's focus on how do we reactivate it.
Okay. Trish.
In doing so, I think perhaps we could even consult with our schools.
Yeah.
I know that James Hargis Boys High and Girls High are actively seeking more international students.
Sure.
And this is an area that they're targeting.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to see how they felt about the connection.
Yep. Yeah, I think it would be helpful to talk to Chamber of Commerce and Co as well. See what business opportunities might be there. You got that, Michael? Excellent.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion to that effect?
Move the reports received.
Yep, thank you.
Second.
Tom, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Elections 2025 update. A mover and a seconder that we
can move.
Oh, Grant, yes. And Darren, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's probably not too much else I need to add to it. Hopefully it sets out the process that will be undertaken in over a year's time. You'll be pleased to know that planning is well underway. At this early stage, I'm sure you're all very happy at that thought. But as ever, I'm happy to answer any questions rather than taking you through the report.
Any questions? Barry?
Yeah, last election we had a restriction on where our hoardings could go in relation to corners. Are we going to have a look at that?
So that's managed through
The Electoral Commission.
I have to apply for a resource consent on all the candidates' behalf. That's how our district plan currently works, and a review of that is not likely to be changed before the next election. Just how long that process takes. The controls are set by our roading team and what they consider their safety requirements. Be assured that each time I apply for that resource consent, I check with our roading team to make sure that those requirements are the same. If they've changed, what those are, so I can communicate them clearly. But we'll certainly take your comment on board, and as we go into that process, be working with our my colleagues in the roading team.
Any further questions? Tom?
Under Mary Ward's, about 2/3 of the way through, where it said the previous government released provisions, simple question I guess, but does released mean the same as removed in that respect?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so they removed
yes.
provisions.
Yes.
So was that both positive and negative in the sense that if council, and it said that the current government might bring that back, so was it positive and negative in the sense that if the council proposed it, then the community could require a poll? But was the reverse true, that the community could require a poll without it being recommended by council? You know what I mean by positive and negative?
Yeah, so it was both. So
It was both.
council
Okay,
made a decision to either have or not have Māori wards. Following that decision, the community could then demand a poll.
Right.
Either way. So if council decided not to have a Māori ward, the community could, in theory, demand a poll and be polled on whether they wish to establish one in spite of what council had resolved. Evidence showed that it was generally the other way, that the community would demand a poll on council having decided to create a Māori ward, and those Māori wards were generally, each time they were done, overturned by the community. So
Okay, I just wanted a clarification on the wording. Thank you.
And I think, sorry, just Mr. Mayor, there was one part in that report. There had been a proposed bill to abolish the ratepayer elector roll. That was defeated in the House. It was a Labour Party bill, and the government has not proceeded with it. So just an update from when I did my report.
Further discussions? Questions? I've got two for you, Michael. In the early part of that reference in tab 11 in relation to Māori wards, you say many councils have adopted a Māori ward for the first time. Do you know how many?
I believe it was 34.
Okay, so it's roughly half. And the other part on page 53, I think it said when council rejected the creation of a Māori ward. Now, it was my understanding that Mana Whenua turned that down.
So Mana Whenua, in our consultation,
Yep.
Mana Whenua gave a very clear feedback to us that they did not wish to have a Māori ward.
Yep.
That was then as part of our representation review because of a legislative change that was only for that year.
Yep.
this council then declined
Yep.
The Māori ward creation.
So to confirm that, Mayor Clark, it was council that made that decision.
To decline it.
Yep.
Okay, that's fine. Just want to be clear on that. That's all right. That's all good. I've got a mover and a seconder, and oh, sorry, Evelyn.
Just a point of clarification as well. During the community consultation also came up with the declination of a separate Māori ward. So it wasn't just that Mana Whenua did, it was that the community consultation also did not recommend the development of a Māori ward.
Yep. Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carry. So we now move into the major late item, which is the government policy statement on transport. And he gets up with a smile on his face.
It's because he's going.
Oh, that's what the chocolates are there for.
He's going to the Easter egg.
Go.
Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The government policy statement on transport has just been released. You'll recall that there was one last year. I'm assuming that there was a submission made then. This one is a slight turn away from the original direction of the GPS in 2023. If I can summarise, there is much more of a user pays feel for things that are considered nice to haves rather than must haves. So the key points, it covers the years 24 to 27 as the GPS normally does. The priorities have an overriding umbrella priority of economic growth and productivity. Everything feeds into that particular priority. Ministerial expectations are around best use of funding and return on investment. So they've taken a slightly different view of delivery. The key driver is value for money for all investment. There is the establishment of a national infrastructure agency, which will develop 30-year plans in conjunction with the NZTA and the Infrastructure Commission. And there is a big push for alternate revenue sources. So that will mean for buses, fare box recovery. They're encouraging to increase the proportion of that and look at PPPs again. The other major focus, which is I think good for Invercargill City Council, is the lifting of investment into local roads as well as state highways. And this is around maintenance and resilience. And you'll recall, I think you've probably seen the pothole category. It's not quite called pothole, but it's about rehabilitation and resurfacing, so it's combined in that. The one concern I did have is that safety is a category that's been embedded in other categories, so it's sort of been washed through. The downside, depending on your view, is that the green initiatives, vehicle kilometre travel reduction and emissions are not prioritised as an individual priority. They will be addressed through the emissions trading scheme, which they are going to redesign and use it for that purpose. There's still the goal of net zero by 2050. And that's probably it for now. So I'll leave you with those thoughts and happy to answer questions.
Yep. I've got two questions for me. One is in relation to the Bluff Highway, to State Highway to Bluff. Having travelled down there a few times recently, and apparently it's probably been a whole lot more than that, I don't see a lot of potholes, but what I do see is the side of the road's got those lumps that are about that high, where the heavy trucks are obviously pushing them up. And I think if a car hit one of those, there'd be some major problems. So that's, I guess, in some ways not recognised by NZTA and the importance of the road.
Mr. Chairman, we've had discussions with NZTA recently about that. They acknowledge that there is some parts of the highway that aren't up to standard.
Yep.
There's also an underlying funding challenge, I guess, at the moment.
Yep.
Yeah. What we have written in the submission is encouraging to look at that and get funding for those places. And we've also done the same with the RLTP. Yep. So it is on our radar to keep asking about that.
And the other issue is in relation to Stirling Point and the car parking there. I noticed in the paper recently that there's a big chunk of land, about 8 hectares, which is running from the beginning where the walking track starts and running into the hill. That's up for sale now. It's not owned by iwi, it's not owned by conservation or by us. It's a private sale, 8 hectares at $850,000. And is there some potential for us to erode into that parcel of land if we could secure it to overcome the issues that we have at Stirling Point?
Through the chair, anything can be done.
Yep.
The challenge out there is the topography.
Sure.
It's extraordinarily steep. I know that is it Gunpit Road is one of the things that we've had submission on.
Yep.
Recently. That could be a starting point, but I mean that would be a long-term view.
Yep. Maria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Doug, thank you for your report. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions throughout here, if that's all right. I'll try and be really quick. With the State Highway 1 with Bluff, Invercargill to Bluff, and that's part of the government's reintroduced roads of national significance, with the amount of over, 335 k's to Bluff, under the pothole prevention funding that's there, and although there's not, compared to other areas, major potholes, are we able to more sternly request that the government look at this in a more urgent manner, given the amount of economic development that road contributes to our region and the port? I think in the submission, if we put more pressure in terms of the wording through, would be good. And then the other wee question is the active modes infrastructure group. Invercargill City Council is not part of that, so that's, I want to know, why are we not part of that group, that steering group?
I can't tell you, Councillor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it something we can look at and find out why?
Sorry, councillor, what was the group?
No, I asked, is it something we can look at and find out why we're not part of that steering group?
Yeah, sorry, what was the group?
Oh, it's the active modes infrastructure group. So it's like,
So I know there was
cycles
one
and-
that's administered and represented on by ES, but that's
we're not, we're one of the councils that aren't a part of that steering group that meets quarterly and talks about things like active modes of transport.
Grant.
Yep, thanks, Mr. Beer, and thanks, Doug, for your report. Congratulations on the use of acronyms, outstanding. Just one that I didn't, couldn't work out what it was, but that's not saying. What's WETS?
WETS is ETS with an errant W in front of it.
A what?
It's a typo. The W should not be there. I just found it.
Oh, right, okay.
It's ETS.
And then, and number 6, ministerial expansion. What's an RCA?
Road Controlling Authority.
Right, okay.
Us.
Now, I do have a couple of questions. One, do you think our letter back to the minister is meaty enough, particularly around the Bluff, the state highway between Invercargill and Bluff? For mine, I think we need to weight it a little bit more in terms of what are the actual numbers. We've heard Tom talk earlier about, you know, the millions of dollars that go out of the port there, and I think we've got to add a bit more weight to it just to push it higher up the list. You know, I suspect the government will be getting in heaps of these letters, and I think we just need to really weight ours really strongly around economic benefit, community risk, and safety. And there is some good facts around the safety piece, around the number of accidents, and unfortunately there's some of the deaths. So yeah, I think I'd like to see that, and just wondered if that's a possibility.
I think so. So through the chair, I think so. Given the overriding priority that GPS has,
yeah,
I think we can play that card.
Yeah. And the other point I had, which is more of a, you know, if you talk to some of the road driver training guys, you know, they get angry when they say a car ran off the road, because it's actually the driver that drives off the road, invariably. And I wonder whether they've given any consideration to actually the way to improve our road safety is actually better driver training. And so I think, and I wonder whether there's an opportunity for us to say that, said in the government, about, you know, investing, and you look at our intersection issues that we have, you know, a high number of accidents. You wonder how many of them are just poor driver decision and poor driver training. And we all drive on the roads, you know, and some of the driving behaviour is, you know, just a lack of basic driving skill and training. And I think maybe that's a way for us to stop just trying to build our way out of road safety and actually change the dial on how we can actually get a better, safer roading system and get good investment in our, you know, in our people.
Through the chair, the safety focus from the GPS has been at the enforcement end.
Yes,
they're putting most of their funding,
Yeah.
any funding increases, which is a bit of an I suppose an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff kind
Yeah,
of
that's
roads
right.
where you want to be more proactive.
Yeah,
And I certainly think I could put that in.
yeah, be keen to sort of hopefully put that forward. Thank you.
Yeah, it'd be helpful to know the number of trucks that run over that as well.
Go down the road there.
Well, I mean, I've biked the Bluff back in recent times, and the number of trucks that you see going just mind-boggling. Really is one of the most intense areas I've been across.
Yeah.
Rangi.
Yeah, I think you've just hit the nail on the head. The amount of heavy vehicle that use that Bluff Highway. I hadn't been to Bluff in quite a while, and I went down to Maui a couple of weeks ago, and could not believe, seriously, third world highway that I was travelling on. It was embarrassing. I really couldn't believe that NZTA could let it get that bad. You talk about the road slumps. It's not even wide enough as an actual road to actually do what it's supposed to do. So I think we've got to be talking to our own local MP. We've got to be going stronger than just a submission, which I'm not sure if they listen up there or not. But this is, I could not believe how bad that road is and what it has to deliver.
Yep, we agree. Aaron.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to note there are programs that we actively support around driver training, primarily focused on second chance training for those who have incurred a driving offence, and how we look at supporting those drivers going forward, particularly youth drivers. We have brought some information previously, but I'll work with Doug for us to perhaps bring some more information back around what we are doing in that space. And also just to the piece around, I guess, bolstering the economic piece, Michael and I can just work around the stats for that from an economic development perspective to make sure that Doug's got that additional info that he needs to put into the submission.
Just a question on that. Is that funding from us, or is it from central government for the driver training?
I'd need to double check it, but I believe it's the usual split of funding between us and the agency. Yeah.
How much is it?
Couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I'd need to re-familiarise myself with the figures.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's all right. No worries. Barry?
Yeah, I support anything that's going to be improving their highway to Bluff. But as far as the quality of the asphalt that's going in now, it comes from Indonesia. It used to come from Marsden Point, but the last government shut it down. So I'm just wondering whether this present government will look at reopening it so we get the quality of asphalt that we deserve.
Yeah, there is some announcement from the coalition government that they are looking to Marsden Point again. Yep, Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, Doug, I just forgot to mention and ask a question for clarification. So the Regional Efficiency Group that oversee the spending on the roads and the work that's carried out, are they also going to now be responsible for the design and be the decision makers of that work? The reason why I ask is that a lot of effort's gone into locals know what their roads are like and what have you. I'm worried about losing our voice from through that new group.
Through the chair, no, that won't be their role at all. Autonomy for local design will remain.
Okay, and then last one is, in your report you say that 20% of the traffic from Invercargill to Bluff is with heavy vehicles. Is that in the latest stats, or was it from 2020?
It will be 2022 is my understanding.
Okay.
But I can check those figures, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Tom.
I was just going to support the need to strengthen the paragraphs that we have on the Bluff to Invercargill road, and you know, I've got some, because I've got Chammy to pull out some data for me actually on it, and I'll send them to Michael. But I mean, one of the interesting things is that the dollar value of exports through Bluff has doubled in the last 10 years. It's doubled. Now, I know inflation takes part of that, but even allowing for inflation, it's probably 50% or something like that more trucks, because it's all gone on trucks.
Yeah.
And it's about $2.4 billion worth of goods go through Bluff every year. unfortunately, that includes TY Jerry, so you got to subtract them. I don't know exactly how much that is, but if you do a subtraction, it's certainly over $2 billion.
Yeah.
And if you go back 10 years, it was $1 billion.
And equally the imports
So I'll
coming
send
in,
that
fuel
the
and
charts to
fuel.
you,
Yep.
Michael, if you
Thank you.
to Aaron.
Oh, Ponio.
Mine was just really around, where did you get 20% of traffic around trucks on the Bluff Road?
Yeah, it's a state highway count.
Was it?
Yeah. If I can give that context, the standards heavy vehicle percentage would be around 8% normally.
Oh, right, yeah, so it's double that.
More than double.
Okay. Yeah, there just appears to be a lot more than that on the road these days.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, there being none, I've got three recommendations there. We've got a mover and a second. No, so a mover and a seconder for those. Grant and Trish, working on the assumption that staff will reword the submission in Appendix 2 to give it a bit more teeth. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Okay, a mover and a seconder for us to go into public excluded. Darren and Trish. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried.